Joining me this morning to talk a little bit about her recent visit and listening tour to the Farmington and San Juan County area, the state's Early Childhood Education and Care Department Secretary Elizabeth Groginsky is joining me this morning from her office in Santa Fe. Secretary, good morning. It's great to have you on the air with me.
Thank you, Scott. It's great to be here with you.
Thank you very much. So you were just in town, actually earlier this week, for a listening session as you kind of travel around the state. And so you were asking for ideas about early childhood education, or talk to us a little bit about what you heard when you were here.
Yes, thanks, Scott. My visit to the Farmington, Bloomfield, Aztec area was part of a multi-leg spring tour 2022. And the purpose of these visits are to both meet some of the providers that we administer funding to, but also to hold we call them community roundtables or listening sessions, to bring together all the partners that work in the prenatal to 5 system that support families and young children. To hear from them, how we're a brand new department. We've only been around just a little under 2 years. So how are we doing? What are some things that we could be doing better to support them as providers? And also for families who are there, what can the department do to better reach out to families and provide supports and services that they need in their communities?
Very good. And I was going to mention that you're one of the state's newest, if not the newest, department, right? As you mentioned, only being around less than 2 years. And so what have you heard, at least, or what did you hear here in Farmington about how things are going, how we are caring for our children, this early childhood idea of helping? And what I keep hearing is that, this is a way to maybe bring kids out of some of that poverty and some of those issues, those educational issues, to get them ready to get to school and do a full learning when they hit kindergarten, things like that. What did you hear when you were here?
Yes, that is exactly right, Scott. The role of our department is to make sure that children are school ready. And when we think about that, it's the whole child. It's their social and emotional development, their academic, their physical health and well-being. And we heard some great things while we were there in Farmington about the way the community comes together. The home visiting programs, working closely with our family, infant, toddler providers. Those are providers who support infants and toddlers with developmental disabilities or delays, who are at risk of developing those delays. So that's in that birth to 2 period of life. And then we had great conversations with our early care and education providers who are supporting children 6 weeks all the way up to 12 years of age, but particularly some of the New Mexico pre-K providers, whether those were at San Juan Community College, at the Farmington Public Schools, and also at Gold Star Academy. We were able to see New Mexico pre-K in all these different types of settings. And so the purpose of the new department is that we better align this work and that we support providers and families in this, what research has shown is the most critical and the most rapid period of development in a human's life. So the opportunity for communities to support families in authentic ways, making sure those programs and services that they're delivering are actually meeting the needs of families in that community and that they are high quality. It's just been a huge priority of Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham's administration, is to make sure that families and young children are well supported so that they do enter kindergarten ready to succeed.
And having this as a State Department level position, right, and advocacy, yeah, and being able to kind of tour and look at some of the areas of our state. We know we have a very rural state. Farmington is somewhat urban, although not as urban as the Rio Grande corridor, of course. But we still have some very rural parts of our state, and so it's got to be hard to try to get these services to each nook and cranny of New Mexico. Is that one of your challenges in your department?
Yes, we see that as a challenge and an opportunity. We were really grateful. I also traveled with our Assistant Secretary for Native American Early Education and Care, Giovanna Archuleta. She's the first in the state, and she's first in the nation. And she was able to go with the PMS Early Head Start program and see a program on the Navajo Nation. We are going to be going back into that part of the state later in May to Gallup Grants and Window Rock. But we want to be sure that this department is supporting providers, communities really. One of the great things, Scott, that we've done with our federal relief dollars is support local early childhood system building grants. money that will help people in the Farmington, Aztec, Bloomfield area come together, support better coordination and collaboration across the programs. And so we issued a $300,000 grant, one in the McKinley County area and one in the San Juan area for coalitions, which we saw show up in great numbers at the public library there in Farmington, which was beautiful. And we want to support that level of local system building work. They then communicate with us at the state level, and they help us understand what it is that we need to do. This administration is committed to rural communities, to making sure that wherever families are in New Mexico, they have access to home visiting, to early intervention, to early childhood services, early child care, pre-K. This is a commitment that we've made, and I'm excited, and I know that this tour is going to be part of us being a better department, because we're going to be able to see, and I've already seen firsthand, what those opportunities are and how we need to think differently at the state agency level to meet those needs.
Well, I'm so glad you got a chance to see our library. We're very proud of that facility. The building is beautiful, and the programs it offers are first rate as well. Madam Secretary, can you talk a bit about the accessibility you kind of mentioned and the affordability, right, of being able to make sure every family who needs these services of early childhood education can afford them or get access to them? There's enough seats in those classrooms or things along that line. Is that something else that you're looking at around the state?
Yes, absolutely. Again, this in our administration, the governor is committed to universal, high quality, affordable, accessible childcare, early care and education. A couple things we heard at the community meeting, which were really heartwarming, were from childcare providers. We took our American Rescue Plan. We were one of the first states in the country to get those dollars out to communities, to childcare providers. We heard from a gentleman who's taken it over his childcare business from his grandparents. And he said they were able to make improvements to their facility that they had no idea how they were going to be able to do that. So the money from the state that they received, they've upgraded the facility. We saw this across all the places we visited. The other thing we've seen is Governor Lujan Grisham expanded childcare eligibility last year up to 350% for families. So right now, that's a family of four making $97,000 can get assistance paying for their childcare. We heard from the childcare providers, this is helping families. And then childcare providers are using some of their funds to help families offset some of the co-payments and the costs that they have. So expansion of childcare is something that we are looking to do even more in the coming years, but making sure that childcare, which is very expensive for most families, is available and affordable and accessible to all families in New Mexico.
And I guess that would be part of my next question to you, Madam Secretary, is the sustainability of these generous programs and things like that. Certainly, we're all very grateful that our state is seeing an influx of revenue from various sources, but we all know that sometimes it kind of rises and falls. And so in the lean years, do you hope that there's some stability in the funding that you're then able to continue these programs and these very generous assistance programs for families in our state?
Yes. Thank you, Scott, for that question. Again, the legislature and the governor were so wise when they not only created the department, but the following year created the Early Childhood Trust Fund. They started it with $300 million, and it is now grown to over $2 billion. And that corpus of that fund will distribute to our department 5% of that fund, or $30 million annually, whichever is greater. So the projections coming out of the legislature right now are that by 2026, that fund will be distributing to our department around $176 million annually. So we feel very good about that, because our projections show that we're going to need those revenues, as to your point, to offset some of what the federal relief dollars have been able to fill in and stabilize for us. Additionally, we have the Land Grant Permanent Fund going to the voters in November. If that passes and the voters say yes, we should spend a portion of our Land Grant Permanent Fund on early care and education. That will also distribute to the department an additional 150, 160. Again, those are all based on projections, 160 million annually. So this is good news for New Mexico, because these investments we're making now will be able to be sustained. Of course, the legislature will make those decisions about where those funds are appropriated. but we feel very confident that the groundwork that this department is laying and the work we're doing with local communities will help us have a very positive path forward into the future years.
To a lot of children's benefit, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Thank you, Scott. That's exactly right.
Very good. Well, Secretary Groginsky, I appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much for joining me. We look forward to seeing you again in Farmington sometime soon.
Wonderful, Scott. I look forward to being there.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
You too. Thank you very much. That is New Mexico Secretary Elizabeth Groginsky of the Early Childhood and Care Department, my guest this morning here on KSJE.